He quoted from a verse in Deuteronomy. Now I only have the New Testament because I've been living basically as a Hindu for the last 10 years. So not that I wanted to get rid of my Bible, but somehow I wasn't able to keep my Bibles around me. I moved many times, and sometimes only took little bags with me, and usually only took my scripture that I read from, which is the Bhagavad Gita. So he quoted from Deuteronomy, and I'm just telling you, you can read it yourself. I wrote it down, verse 29 of chapter 29, Deuteronomy. It says, God does not reveal everything. And in the New Testament also, Jesus on the Mount of Olives and in other places when he was approached by crowds and crowds of people, did not reveal everything. He spoke in parables. Why? Because the truth is an atom bomb. It's a bomb. It will destroy your life. Now, why am I saying that the truth will destroy your life? Because your life, if you're like most people, is not built on truth. So, the first thing often that God does when people start to come close to him is take down the old structure. And this is something that I've experienced. And it can be very far-reaching. And actually it depends on your aspiration. If you really want God, if you really want to live the life in the Spirit, then you may or may not, but very often you may experience sweeping and radical changes in your life that you would not welcome as a quote-unquote normal person. And it may be that you lose your home, lose your family, lose everything, lose your health, lose your mind. Many of these things have happened to me. But I'm sitting before you right now, and I'm a perfectly sane person. But I'm not normal. I'm not normal at all. Okay, so, and normal meaning my life does not go according to the norm. I'm not like most people. What am I like? I'm like Paul. What did he say? Now, Paul was the quote-unquote 13th apostle, right? Paul never met Jesus in the flesh. Christ spoke to him, appearing to him in a light. So Paul was not part of the group. He wasn't part of the first group. I contend that it was never Jesus' intention for people to live as Christians the way most Christians live. Never was that his intention. That was never his idea. That people should worship him and depend upon him. And now I'm talking about the historical Jesus. I'm not speaking of Christ. I want to separate these two ideas. The Christ, I'm not speaking of the Christ. I'm speaking of the historical human being who lived and walked on the earth. Now that might be somewhat alienating for some of the people who might listen. I've been speaking recently about the ghost in the machine. In other words, the spirit that inhabits the flesh. When I speak of Christ, that's what I mean. The spirit, the force of truth. Not the person, meaning the flesh, the vehicle that carried that spirit. Although that is also deified, that is also divine, that spirit, that flesh, the vehicle. But that's not my main focus. Very difficult to explain in words. Let me try it again. For it pleased the Father that in him all the fullness should dwell. All the fullness dwelt within that form. And by him to reconcile all things to himself. By him, whether things on earth or things in heaven, having made peace through the blood of his cross. The suffering of Jesus changed the world of Jesus' time. But it doesn't change our world. I'm so sorry to tell you that. If you are looking at everything through this lens, through this filter of this is the absolute truth, there's nothing else. This is not the absolute truth. The absolute truth is here, within each person. All religion springs from the same source. In going back to the source, everything comes from the same point. Truth is everywhere. You just have to open your eyes to it. It's very difficult to do that for many people. But some people, to the grace of God, to the blessing of divine, will be able in their lifetimes to see the truth. And the truth will make them free. And that's what Jesus was after in his time. And that's what Christ is about. Christ and Jesus are the same and not the same. I stand on both sides of the question. They are the same, they are not the same. So, the point of Jesus' suffering was reconciliation, but it was during his time. The point of your suffering is reconciliation in your time. Dr. Stanley said in his speech, the one I heard yesterday, that many, many difficulties have come to this country, and people are crying and distressed and thinking, this is terrible, everything has gone wrong. But what Dr. Stanley said was that it's a wake-up call, and it is God's work to reconcile people to himself. So, and then he told the story about Joseph. Remember Joseph in the Bible? If you've read anything in the Old Testament, if you sat in church on Sundays and listened in Sunday school, you'll know the story of Joseph and his brothers who were very jealous of him, sold him into slavery. He went down to Egypt, became a servant in the house of Potiphar. Potiphar's wife lusted after him. Potiphar threw him in jail. While he was in